heard of, Fresno, California. But at 18 years old, I had no idea that the one line comes with you. And just 12 months later, in the middle of the best college basketball season of my career, I would fail another drug test. But this time, the conditions were different. If I ever wanted to play there again at 20 years old, I had to walk into a press conference, look into the cameras, and announce on ESPN Live that I was a 20-year-old cocaine addict. And if I ever wanted to play there again, after the press conference, I had to jump on a plane and fly to Salt Lake City, Utah, and check into my first treatment center and do 30 days. If I completed it, I could play. So I walked in and I cried in front of the cameras. I cried because my mom and my grandfather flew in from Boston to watch me play in that game. And instead of going out to dinner with my grandfather, he had to watch his grandson announce on national TV about his cocaine addiction. After that press conference, I jumped in their car. Instead of going out to dinner to celebrate, they dropped me off at the airport to go to treatment. 2 hours later, I checked into my first treatment center at 20 years old. When I walked in, I looked at the people sitting in the chairs, and I said, this is a joke. I'll never be like these people. I would never do what they've done, especially to their family. So I kept my mouth shut, I judged, I closed down, I didn't say a word, and I did my 30 days. And when that 30 days was up, I jumped on a plane, I flew back to Fresno, I played in my senior season. In my senior season, my wife got pregnant. My son, little Christopher, was born. And at the end of that senior season, my dream came true. At the end of that senior season, I was announced as the 33rd pick in the NBA draft by the Denver Nuggets. When I walked into the locker room with the Denver Nuggets, I had teammates that pulled me aside and they said, we know your story. We've seen it on 60 Minutes. You had a reality show on Fox. That's not happening here, man. There's no drinking on this team for you. There's definitely no smoking pot. When we go on road trips, we're gonna knock on your hotel room door to make sure you're okay. And if you wanna leave the hotel, you can't unless you're with one of us. And when we go to restaurants, you can't order alcohol in front of us. We don't care that you're of legal age. You have a wife and a baby. And for their sake, we want to make sure you take advantage of this opportunity as your teammates. And with those type of leaders and men who are willing to sacrifice in my life for the first time, that rookie season is considered a success. And when that season ended, I jumped on a plane, I moved back to my hometown, I bought a house, a couple of cars, and I started settling in. And at 22 years old, I was really proud of that house. Not too many 22-year-olds where I come from own homes, so I wanted to share it with all my friends. So my wife and I had an open door policy, and we decided to have a big party to celebrate. And that night, as we celebrated, a kid who I went to high school with walked in and tapped me on my shoulder, gave me a big hug, and said, let's take a walk, we need to talk. I walked around the front of my house, and he said, remember we were in high school, and every once in a while we get our hands on Vicodins and perks? I said, of course. He said, there's a new pill. It's like taking 4 Vikes and 4 perks in one shot. He reached into his pocket, he pulled out a Ziploc bag, and that Ziploc bag with these little yellow pills. He said, these are 40 milligram OxyContin. I'm charging $20, you want to try one? In 1999, I had never heard of OxyContin. So in 1999, I just trusted in my friend. I reached in my pocket, I handed him a 20. He dropped that little yellow pill and palmed my hand. I looked at it and I laughed. I said, I can't believe you're getting away with charging $20 for one pill. So I made one last effort and I pulled into the Bologna, Italy train station to watch the movement. And I watched this little Italian man walk over the cars as they pulled up. And after I watched this little Italian man do this for about 45 minutes, I said, it's my turn. I started my car, I pulled up, he walked up at 24 years old. I can't say perk 30s in Italian. I can't say OxyContin. 24 years old in full withdrawal. The only thing I could think to do with this man standing at my window was to roll up my sleeve and point to my veins. As soon as I pointed to my veins, he nodded his head yes. He opened my door, he sat down, we drove away. I pulled down a little alley. He looked at me one more time and said, "Are you sure you want heroin and not cocaine?" I said, "I'm so sick from these pills. I just need some heroin to get me through so I can get some scent to me." He reached in his mouth, he grabbed the string that was tied to his tooth, and he pulled it up. On that string were 15 balloons of black tar heroin. He said, "How many do you want?" I said, "I'm gonna buy the whole string, I may never see it." He broke it off, I paid him. He reached in his pocket, he pulled out a spoon and a lighter. And he started cooking on my front seat. At 24 years old, I couldn't draw you a picture of heroin. At 24 years old, I couldn't tell you the color of it. At 24 years old, I'd never seen a needle except the doctor's office. But at 24 years old, that man looked me in the eyes and he said, "If you're so sick, roll up your sleeve." I rolled up my sleeve, I closed my eyes, I clenched my fist, I looked away. At 24, I became an intravenous drug addict. At 24, I never went back to the pills. A month later, my coach knocked on my door unexpectedly. When I opened it, he said, "Chris, I'm sorry to bother you, but the bus is outside, the team is already in it. Pack your bags, we're going to the mountains for 10 days for training camp." Best of luck, I quit. You can take the $500,000. You can take this beautiful house, the school that my son is, and I'll return the cars today. Because I know in my heart, I can't go to the mountains for 10 days. Because I can't take the man with the string with me. And without him, there's no more basketball left in my life. So I walked away from a $500,000 and moved back home. And for the next 4 months, I had no job. And for the next 4 months, I woke up every single morning and I went to the same Dunkin' Donuts at the same time, at the same man, spent the same amount of money and shot the same amount of heroin. And every single morning, my little parking spot, he'd pull up and throw it through my window. I'd sit there, and I would shoot it. As soon as I would, I'd lay my seat back. I'd wait 10 minutes. I'd let the heroin kick. As soon as the heroin kicked in, I'd stop my car, I'd get in the drive-thru. I'd order a coffee and some munchkins for my kids. And I'd walk into my house like I was the hero and save the day with the munchkins. Except this day, I felt this feeling I had never felt before. And by the grace of God, I didn't put my seat back and wait 10 minutes. Because the next thing I remember was glass hitting me in my face. 2 police officers dragging me out of the car and laying me down on the road. When I opened my eyes, they were standing on top of me. I said, "Officer, please tell me what happened, what's the problem?" The police officer looked at me with disgust. He said, "Christopher, what happened, what's the problem? Are you serious, son? Look at your arm." I looked down to my right and my arm was bleeding. And there was still a needle in it. He said, "You just overdosed, son. And when you overdose, you took your foot off the brake, Chris. And when you took your foot off the brake, you hit that woman right there in front of you. You have a right to remain silent. This little secret you've been living is about to be a public tragedy. I hope your wife and children are ready to live with this burden." At 24 years old, he picked me up off the ground, threw me in handcuffs. At 24 years old, he charged me with 2 felonies and put me into jail. 5 hours later, when I bailed out of jail, I didn't call my mommy and daddy to send me back to Utah. I didn't call my wife to say keep the kids away from the TV because I'm all over Sports Center. My first phone call was to the man I met in the parking lot that morning. Because what he sold me that day was so good it almost killed me. And that's how sad our life gets. When we chase death for a feeling. Unfortunately for me and my family, I went on to play professional basketball for 4 more years. To his bedroom, I'm grabbing this gun, I'm sticking it in my mouth, and I'm blowing my head off. June 4th, 2008, I'm ending this nightmare. Not for me, my poor family. And as I'm walking out thinking they're better off without me, this nurse keeps yelling my name, asking me to come back. When I turn around, she's in her 50s. I waved her off and kept walking. She said, "Christopher, don't wave me off. I went to high school with your mother." My mom died at a young age. I said, "Ma'am, no disrespect to you, but please don't bring up my mother." She said, "Christopher, your mom's talking to me right now, son. Your mom's asking me to do what she can. Please come back in this hospital and let me do your mom, my dear friend, a favor and get her little baby the help he needs." I started crying. I hadn't heard my mother's name in years. I walked back in the hospital. I sat in her office. She called treatment centers all over New England saying, "I have Chris Herren, he played for the Celtics. He's got no money, no job, and no health insurance. Will you please give him a free bed?" Everybody said no. So they kept me for as long as they could. On day 8, I was being discharged, and as I'm getting ready to discharge, the nurse called me into the office and handed me the phone, and on the other line, it was a guy I used to live with. A guy who played in the NBA for 17 years by the name of Chris Mullen. His wife was on the line, and she said, "Chris, we just paid for you to go away to a place in New York for 6 months. Please take our family's gift and get your family back." At 32 years old, I was out of gifts, so I jumped in a car and I drove to this treatment center in Rhinebeck, New York called Daytop. When I checked in, they told me for the first 30 days I could have no contact with my family. On day 30, I walked into that office to make a 2-minute phone call. As soon as I walked in, they hit the timer, handed me the phone. On the other line, it was my wife. My wife was crying. My wife said, "I'm going into labor. I'm all by myself in the hospital. My own family won't come see me because of you. Everyone's so embarrassed of us. I don't want to give birth by myself. Do you think they'll let you come home for the day?" I looked at my counselor and I said, "Can I go home?" He said, "In my opinion, it's a bad idea, but because of the circumstances, I'm going to give you a shot." He called me a cop. And 4 hours later, I was in the delivery room to witness my little boy Drew, my 3rd child, come into this world as a sober father. It's my first sober birth. I was so proud of that moment. I took that little baby, I wrapped him up. I went into our room, I rocked him, fed him, and birthed him as my wife recovered. 8 hours into it, a knock on the door, a nurse comes in, and right behind her is little Christopher and Samantha. Christopher's 9 and Sammy's 7. They both come running up to me and gave me a big hug and said, "It's so good to see you, Dad." 5 minutes later, little Chris looks up at me and said, "I think I'm old enough to hold my little brother." I wrapped up the baby, I placed him in his arms. I walked up to my wife, I gave her a kiss, and I told her, "I've been cooped up in this room for 8 hours. I'm going for a walk, I'll be right back."